Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Newsflash. On today's show, we are starting off the show by trying out some new theme songs, but it's okay. On the show, we are talking about the latest in the Donald Trump impeachment and how Trump tied Ukraine aid to inquiries that he sought, according to this new book by John Bolton, to get you caught up on everything going on there. Also, the crazy story with Mike Pompeo screaming and cursing out a very respected NPR reporter about a question about Ukraine. We'll take a look at Adam Schiff and Donald Trump continuing to have their feud over impeachment. And we'll give you, of course, the latest on 2020. That's what we're doing. We're covering all of our bases, folks. Especially here with this new ever-developing story with impeachment that I have not been very well equipped to follow, but someone who has been following it very, very well is Glenn Bradford. Glenn Bradford is with us today, making his return as a guest here on the show. Glenn, it is so great to have you on, especially at a time like this. Thanks very much, Spencer. Glad to be on. All right, so what is it really that we kind of need to know the most about this impeachment? What has been happening lately? Because I do understand the president's legal team has launched their first real formal presentation of defense for the president at this time, or this past Saturday.
Yeah, it was sort of an abbreviated session. I think they only spoke for about 2 hours. I think they realized that Saturday's not really prime time, and they were going to wait for Monday to present the bulk of their defense. But they said stuff like this isn't an impeachable act, and the Democrats are just doing this in order to harm Trump in the 2020 election. They really didn't address the facts in the case head on. They said something kind of interesting that leads you to think that they should call witnesses, because they said that one of the problems with the Democrats' case is that there's no direct evidence. In other words, there aren't any witnesses that have directly spoken to the president who can say that he did this because he needed investigations, like he held up the aid because he needed the investigations.
It's like, yeah, it's not like they're not trying to help and provide evidence a little bit for this case here. Where is that momentum going? Like, is that the big fight right now that's happening for? Because, I mean, to be honest, I have not been really following this, but I do understand from what I've been able to read, like, the big fight right now in the big point of disagreement is over what to allow in terms of witnesses. How's that fight going? And really, who are the witnesses that the Democrats want to call the most, and what do they think they can get really out of calling those witnesses?
Yeah, it's not real clear. I think the Democrats realize that the president is not going to be thrown out of office. There's no way they can get a supermajority in the Senate. But what they do want is the small victory of having more witnesses and more evidence in this case, so that they can help to make a stronger case and make that vote more difficult. And they hope to sway public opinion in such a way that they will see the Senate vote as something totally partisan and really not right for the country as a whole. But it's still not clear if the Senate will agree to vote to see more witnesses and more evidence. But the House managers are making a very, very compelling case for that. And Adam Schiff in particular has spoken very eloquently and emotionally about the need for that. But we shall see. They need 4 Republicans to vote with Democrats to even get witnesses, much less a vote to get the president out of office, which is just not going to happen.
Yeah, it definitely is an uphill climb. Even to get witnesses to even have some sort of a semblance of what could possibly be a fair trial. Who are their best bets in terms of getting what they want here with the witnesses to make their case to the American people to kind of prove that this was all really worth it, this whole big production that they've kind of put on here?
Well, they want Bolton first and foremost. Bolton was the national security advisor at the time that the Ukraine aid was held up. And Bolton has told, there's public reporting that Bolton actually had a meeting with the president, and I believe that Mike Pompeo was in that meeting as well, where they tried to convince the president to release the aid. And it's just not known what was said in that meeting, and the House managers really want to find out. That would be very important evidence. I don't know if you heard, but there's a breaking story tonight by the New York Times that
that's what I was just going to get to.
They have seen a draft of the book that Bolton is writing, and in it he says that he had this meeting with Trump, and Trump admitted that he was holding up the aid for these investigations that into the Bidens. So, so it's out in the public reporting right now, and that's going to put even more pressure, I think, on GOP senators to put Bolton on the stand. And they also want Mick Mulvaney. Mulvaney is key to this because he also heads up the OMB, and so the OMB is the office in the executive branch that deals with the aid, and they're the office that releases this kind of aid, and they were the ones who held it up. So he knows all about that. Plus, he seems to have been someone who talked to Lev Parnas about, what to do and how to work with Giuliani, and he seemed to be tightly in the loop of what Giuliani and Parnas and Fruman were up to, and Sondland and the other characters were up to in Ukraine. So they really want to speak to him. And then they want to speak to this guy, Mike Duffy, who was a political appointee who worked in the OMB. And he was the guy who sidelined the person in the OMB who's a career professional in the OMB after he balked about continuing to hold up this aid. So Duffy kind of took over for him, and he sent this rather incriminating email to the Department of Defense, explaining to them that they needed to hold up the aid and so forth. So they really want to speak to him. And then there's some other guy whose name I can't remember, who I think was a deputy to John Bolton, who they also want to speak to. So those are the four key people that Democrats want as witnesses.
Yeah, it definitely seems that they're going to need to get into that very, very importantly, because it's like John Bolton definitely the biggest personality, and it seems that this very, very important story here, but this is breaking news. It's going to be interesting to see what this really means, because it looks like, he told them to freeze this aid, and it's pretty much what this seems to be is according to this new book, he told his national security advisor in August he wanted to continue to freeze $391 million in security assistance to Ukraine until officials there helped with the investigations into Democrats, including the Bidens, according to an unpublished manuscript by the former advisor John Bolton. The president's statement, as described by Bolton, could undercut a key element of his impeachment defense that the holdup in aid was separate from Trump's request that Ukraine announce investigations into his perceived enemies, including Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. who worked for Ukrainian energy firm while his father was in office. So yeah, that's from the New York Times. They're pretty much laying out the case that there is a corrupt, there is a real corruption here, and I think what impact will this have on the Republican senators if this story over time is widely accepted as fact in the case?
Well,
that was kind of the $1 million question there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that they probably were really feeling the pressure during that 3-day period when the House managers were making their case, and Schiff was so eloquent and emotional about the need for this, the need for more evidence and for more testimony. But now that the trial has shifted to the defense, I'm sure that the GOP senators are already saying that that the defense lawyers have made a good case, and so they can now kind of use the defense's arguments to kind of change the momentum of this trial. And it's not clear if the Democrats can take it back again. There's going to be after the Trump lawyers are finished, which will be, I believe, Tuesday. They will finish up. There will be a day or two where senators can write questions and send them to either the prosecutors or the defense attorneys and have them answer. So, hopefully Democratic senators will pose questions to Schiff and the other House managers in such a way that they can once again put back into the public mind and the senator's mind about the need for more witnesses. So, and then after that, I think they will vote for whether or not they should have witnesses. And if that's a upvote, then they will vote individually on specific people who they want as witnesses. But first they have to get past that vote whether they want any witnesses.
So this could really take a while, judging on how long they have to squabble each individually over what witness could happen and in what constraint. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of pressure put on each witness and all that stuff. It just feels like it's this is going to definitely what are the timetable estimates on how long this impeachment trial is going to take?
Well, if they don't vote for witnesses, if they shut that down, the trial could end as soon as next Friday.
Oh, okay. So that could not take very long, but
right. At least that's Mitch McConnell's plan. And of course, the president is hoping for that. The sooner that it's over, the better. But if they vote for witnesses and more documents, then this is going to drag out the trial considerably, because they're first going to have to, if they actually say they vote to have Bolton testify, they first have to depose him, and that's going to happen probably behind closed doors. And then whatever other witnesses they agree to also are going to have to be deposed. So that will probably take a few days. And then it's not clear exactly whether they will testify live. It's very doubtful that Republicans will let them testify live after their depositions. It might be that they videotape the depositions and show those, or they have behind the scenes, closed door sessions, and they only produce manuscripts of their testimony. I think Mitch McConnell is going to try to make this as low key as possible and make it more difficult for the American public to really hear what they have to say. That's my guess.
So I've if I am correct here, I've heard some kind of mixed things about John Bolton